Hello again and welcome back. Today I want to share something very ancient, very simple and incredibly powerful. Building on from what I was talking about yesterday, from my very kind of activating visit to Glastonbury, and kind of sitting with some sacred geometry and feeling into the different patterns and the different elements and their symbols and all of the different things to do with sacred geometry, which I've been aware of before and known about, but not really kind of delved into very deeply. But while we were in Glastonbury, we visited the Chalice Well and, well, the Chalice Well Gardens, and there was a part in there that was an actual well, and the top of the well had the two circles that overlap each other, which is called the Vesica Pisces, which is a very ancient and powerful symbol. And I see this symbol as representing what I talked about in the video yesterday, which was the sun, the kind of masculine principle of consciousness, and the earth, which is the feminine principle of form, and where they meet into the middle, where they intersect, that's where life is born. That's where we come in as those two things emerge together. So this is where consciousness becomes matter, so spirit in form, and the Holy Trinity, which is what I spoke about yesterday. I also feel when I look at this symbol, it's a bit like the moment that life is created. So the fertilized egg first divides into two cells, and then that starts to create the human form. So again, fitting in with the, consciousness and the earth forming together to create form as they overlap. And as this pattern multiplies, as we add more circles to that Vesica Pisces, it's developed into what we know as the flower of life, which you will have all seen in many different places. I'd seen it lots of times and knew that it was the flower of life, but I didn't really know that it was the creation code, if you like, for the world, for humanity, for everything. And this geometric pattern, you'll have seen it in lots of different places, on temple walls if you've visited different temples. I remember seeing it in Egypt, at different sacred sites, in ancient manuscripts, and carved into stone all over the world. And it's found in many, many ancient cultures. And it reminds us that life itself is all built on geometry, sacred geometry. And the geometry represents frequency and pattern, and not random chaos, but a really intelligent living design. And it got me thinking about the world in which we live and the things that are all happening, and how within me I've always known that it was a disharmonious place to be, and didn't have any sort of clue as to why. But as I've moved on to, through my awakening journey, I've kind of come to the conclusion that humanity once lived in harmony with this original blueprint, and it's now coming back to that original blueprint. As we move through all of this chaos, we're kind of coming back to that. And this original harmony was that the natural balance of the energies, the masculine and the feminine, a natural balance of consciousness and matter, and heart and mind. And over time, and there's lots of reasons why this kind of happens. Some talk about fear-based overlays by different races of beings, domination, separation, survival consciousness. But wherever it came from, or whether you see that symbolically or literally, what we can feel into is that humanity as a species moved away from harmony and started to adopt the fear consciousness. But now we're remembering. And from that distorted overlay or matrix or whatever you want to call it, we're now coming back into harmonious balance, which is so amazing and so exciting. Then it got me thinking about how there was a wonderful book written by a man called Professor Masaru Emoto, and he wrote about how frequency shapes form, and he did some experiments with water, and he took different water, well, he took water and he put water in different like vessels, and some of the water was spoken to with love, joy and gratitude. And then when that water was frozen and became crystallized, it was looked at under a microscope, and those crystals that were formed were beautiful symmetrical crystals. Then the experiment was done with speaking to some water with anger, hatred and fear, and those crystals became really distorted and chaotic and non-symmetrical. And I remember reading this book years ago and finding it so fascinating that kind of intention that's spoken to the water creates the form. And so today I want to bring in this a little bit in terms of how we speak to ourselves and how we think about ourselves, because we are, as we know, 70% water, which is one of the 5 elements that we're made up of, water being one of them. And how we speak to ourselves and how we think about ourselves and the emotions that we carry are literally shaping the geometry of our bodies within each cell, which is mind-blowing, actually. And water, it's well known that water carries memory and it carries intention, and this experiment proves that. And many of our ancient cultures held water as sacred, and they did water ceremonies, they blessed it, they bathed in it ceremonially, and they drank from the sacred springs. And this is what I was thinking about while I was at the Chalice Well in Glastonbury. And these places were honoured as healing portals of the earth, where water carried not just the minerals that we need to sustain ourselves, but they also carry consciousness and code and pattern. So a really amazing practice that I had heard about before, but it's brought me back to this again, is that we can begin to consciously program our water again. So we can program our drinking water when we have a bath or a shower, and before we drink it or before we bathe, we can simply offer love, and we can offer thank you and gratitude, and infuse it with the intention for healing or clarity and peace. And we can also, as we go out in our lives, we can bless water wherever we go, you know, the rivers, the lakes, the streams, the reservoirs, all of the waters of the earth. We can infuse them with our energy wherever we go. We can do that in our home, and we can say silently with our heart, you know, I bless these waters. We can find the frequency of love and for gratitude and code that water with that frequency. And another thing that we can see quite easily physically is everything is frequency. So there was an experiment that you might have seen where there's sand placed on a vibrating plate, and when sound is played through that plate, the sand then forms precise geometric patterns in response to the sound, and it's called cymatics. And I want you to think about today that whatever thoughts you're having, your emotions that are there, your feelings about yourself or anything, are what shape the matter of your life. So every cell in the body holds the potential for the original undistorted code, and they hold the wisdom for the sacred geometry of wholeness and the blueprint of harmony. And right now, through our conscious awareness, and as more and more of us become consciously aware, we're beginning to remember this. We're really beginning to, it's not like we're learning it, it's like we know it inherently. So we started to uncover this remembering. And this is what the new earth is. It's not something outside of us. And I've spoken about this before, it is something being born through us. And thinking about frequency and geometry and restoring that beautiful, harmonious, harmonic pattern within us is the way that we do that. It's just another way of kind of looking at it. And I'm just going to go over the simple practice that I talked about yesterday, which was to ground into the earth beneath you through roots coming out the bottom of your feet. Draw the earth's energy up through the roots and into your heart space. Then connecting to the sun, center of the sun, and bringing down that consciousness into your crown and into your heart space, and let them meet into your chest. And maybe you can visualize that today as the Vesica Pisces, those two circles that overlap, and that part in the middle is you, which is spirit in form, the Holy Trinity within you. Then imagine that light radiating outward through your heart's toroidal field. Imagine that broadcasting this original pattern, this original blueprint into the world. And as I said yesterday, as each of us does this one by one, the field of humanity changes. And just as the distortion once spread and the fear was adopted by humanity, now this new coherence spreads exactly the same way. And this coherence is built on a pattern of love. So we're not here by accident. We're here to remember, to repattern, and to bring love back into form. And I just thought those were quite useful ways to look at it. I know that my mind quite liked that in terms of thinking about harmonic pattern rather than a distorted form. So I'll just invite you today, when you have a glass of water, when you take a bath or a shower, to just really connect with that element, one of the 5 elements of the building blocks of life. And just to consciously, with your awareness, to program that water with love, with gratitude, with joy. And just bringing your awareness to that and feeling the energy of love, gratitude and joy, and just imagining that just being infused into every single cell of your body as you take that sip, as you immerse yourself in that bath, and just allow that water to work for you in harmonic coherence. And as usual, I'd love to hear your comments, your stories, and to know where you're from. And thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next one.